Hi, I'm Nadia Dunn, your host of CCL TV's More Than Packages interview series. But who are CCL? Well, CCL are an independent and neutral third-party logistics service provider and custom clearance specialist. From e-concept to e-logistics for e-commerce, CCL has the e-solution. Now, today we're going to be in conversation with Tom Hill, who's CEO and founder of Clicksit. And from our business development team, we have Amy joining us. Guys, thanks so much for being here today. How are you both?
Very well, thank you. Very well. Nice to meet everyone.
I'm good too, thank you.
Great. Now, Tom, can we start by, if you share with us who you are, your background and your role at Clicksit?
Yeah, so I'm Tom Hill, founder and CEO of Clicksit. My background's in logistics and shipping. Traditionally, I was in real freight shipping, more like CCL, the parcel movement and things like that. But then I moved more into the e-commerce side of things. So really about how you get parcels to customers, the software that's associated with that, and making that process really seamless. And off the back of that and that movement into that at Metapack, I actually founded Clicksit because I just saw a gap in the market and a problem to solve around returns management, and specifically around small and medium-sized businesses, helping them to compete with the big guys.
So what industry were you in before you started getting involved in that side?
So yeah, traditional logistics. So Kuehne Nagel, I was at Kuehne Nagel following university. So that's the shipping, freight forwarding, real raw kind of moving goods around the world, although they do some other things as well. I then went into Metapack, which is the e-commerce and shipping. So that's the combination of both. So you've got that pure logistics, but it's really about the software that connects to those logistics services.
So were you responsible for developing international shipping solution for Metapack's cross-border clients?
Well, primarily it started out that Metapack is a software solution. Retailers use that solution. And my role in Metapack was implementing that. So implementations manager. So getting retailers using their software. That then evolved into something that was more international, because I actually moved into a role that was focused on getting international retailers using that service. So that had me traveling around the world. So I was in Russia, I was in Hong Kong, China, along with a few European countries. And it really was about how we could enable their software for international clients to make that seamless for actually shipping back into Europe.
And you mentioned that Clicksit kind of followed from that. Was Metapack kind of or your role at Metapack instrumental in developing Clicksit?
I think it was instrumental in seeing the gap that I saw in the market. For me, being in that company, quite a niche area, so I've always been entrepreneurial, looked for sort of opportunities around business. And when I went into Metapack, I saw an immediate gap that I just thought, yeah, there's an opportunity there. So it was absolutely instrumental in identifying that gap in the market, yeah. Excellent.
And you say that Clicksit builds amazing customer return solutions for retailers and marketplaces. Can you explain to the audience what and why Clicksit are so important, and what's their USP?
So the fundamental problem that we're solving in the market is that smaller retailers, small, medium-sized retailers can't get the shipping return services that the big retailers can get. So they don't have sufficient volume to actually, they don't process sufficient orders and returns to actually get the direct contracts with carriers like Collect Plus, Hermes, DPD, Royal Mail, all of these different providers. So what we do is we actually hold a master contract with the shipping providers and we resell that service to them. So that just means that they can offer the services that people are used to when they're buying from the likes of ASOS, John Lewis, all these major big players in the market. The experience that they get with them, we bring that to small businesses and enable that. So that's one side of it, the actual shipping side, the contracts and the things around that. But then there's the software side. So we've got a team of experts in the business that have worked in the industry and can build this software. And they've essentially built software that we believe now is world leading in terms of its capabilities. And we make that available to SME businesses. So they would never have the budget to build something like that. They don't have the technical expertise. So they just plug into our service, and it's all self-service, self-onboarding, and really easy to get going with. We focused on SMEs and medium-sized businesses. The reality is that this solution is needed for enterprise level one, tier one retailers, and we'll probably move into that space as we sort of evolve as a business.
Excellent, great, thank you. And Amy, I know you had a couple of questions for Tom.
Yeah, because we all know it's been lockdown, it's been the COVID-19. So I'm just wondering, like, for your company, especially as a startup, and also as you mentioned, you're dealing with the retailers, you're dealing with like the shipping provider side, and also the SMEs. So how challenging has this lockdown and COVID have been for you and your business?
Well, not very, really. So, as a business, we're quite remote anyway. So we were really well suited towards working remotely. That's not been a problem. We do see each other and meet each other as a company, but we were remote, so we didn't have any challenges around getting remote. We also deal with our retailers in a remote way. We don't go out to sites and see them because they're not giant retailers where you need to be on site and working with them. It's all dealt with in the cloud remotely. In terms of setting them up. So we've been incredibly fortunate in that respect, that it's just not created any friction. As I'm sure you're both aware, there's been a lot more buying online as well. So we've benefited immensely from the actual volumes of shipments that have been getting processed, and ultimately the returns that customers have processed. So I would have taken not having COVID. From a business perspective and a personal perspective, I would rather it wasn't around, but ultimately it's been good for our business.
Definitely, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, we obviously everyone has seen that there has been this increase in that there's a bracketing trend that has been happening with the bedroom becoming the changing room. So again, for you guys, for a returns company, that just means more and more business.
Yeah, it does. It's really, what you're getting is more adoption of online. So people who never bought online in the first place have done it for the first time. So those people, especially in the older age brackets, they've been forced into buying online. So they're doing it for the first time. But people are just ever becoming more and more demanding around. They expect a good return service. They expect to order multiple items and return them. The mass adoption of Klarna, I forget the names of the other ones, the pay later providers means that people are more willing to actually spend more money, get the orders, and then return what they don't want. So it's all moving towards that returning. But as a business, we do want to move towards helping our retailers to reduce returns as well. They don't want returns. We don't want them to just be processing returns and us making money from that, essentially. We want to have a relationship with them where we can help them prevent, and that's in the analytics, which we're moving into and developing, so that they can immediately identify, okay, this product is getting returned every single time. What's wrong with the description? What's wrong with the picture online? What is it that's causing this to happen? So we will move into that as things evolve. And ultimately, I think with the right data, you can get your returns down significantly with the right product imagery and things.
And from a sustainability perspective, how are you managing your returns from that point of view?
From a sustainability perspective, all of our returns are drop-offs. So essentially you go to a parcel shop and drop off. We don't deal with collections. The logistics of that is too intensive and causes too many challenges around people not being in the house, etc. So not so much a problem during COVID, but our business model is you drop off your parcel. So that does bring some level of consolidation for retailers around sustainability. It's a much more sustainable way to do things. But we're increasingly hearing from retailers they want to provide sustainable routes, and where they can do that is actually in the drop off of deliveries to centralized locations. So if you drop off a parcel to If you deliver a parcel to a post office, that means that you're having less vans that are actually going around delivering those items or delivering it to a local store. So I think that there's a shift towards that so that they can actually cut down on those journeys that delivery drivers are doing.
And if you're hearing that from retailers already, do you think we're going to be at a point where retailers won't use companies that aren't being sustainable or don't have sustainable initiatives in place?
I don't know what the answer to that is. I would say that the big retailers may take that stance. You know, John Lewis deciding, right, if you're not sustainable, if you're not zero carbon neutral, we're not going to use you. The smaller businesses can be a lot less picky about who they can work with and things. But I could see those kind of stances from the big providers. Yeah, from the big retailers.
That's great, thank you. Amy, was there something around social media you wanted to talk to Tom about?
Yeah, as you said, everything's going online, and even before COVID, the use of social media and video content is getting very popular among various industries. So what do you think, like how important this form of marketing to Clicksit as your growth plans?
Yeah, really important, but not something we've done very well so far. Hence, I've agreed to do this, you know, because I'm more of a sort of product tech kind of guy. So it's these retailers, they're in communities as well. So, you know, the Gymshark of this world, the people who are setting up businesses around those areas, they follow Gymshark. They follow people on social media. You know, these people are influencing what services they use, who they use. No, if Gymshark, Ben Francis, isn't it? If Ben Francis went and said, "Oh, you need to try out Clicksit Returns Management," it would have a massive impact. So, because there's a lot of people that follow these figures in the industry. Yeah. So there's a lot more for us to do, a lot more content, a lot more around helping online people do business well online. So Shopify built their community. So Shopify is an e-commerce platform, one that we use. A lot of our clients are on, and they built a lot of their culture and growth around helping small businesses to grow. They fast became the biggest provider and they've had phenomenal growth. But it's really around that community of helping. So I want to start a business. How am I going to help you do that? That's not just saying we're an e-commerce platform, come and use us to sell your products. It's how can we help you to actually build your business? And that's where their content is around and what we need to get into more.
Exactly. Yeah. Just like educate the consumers as well. Sorry, yeah. Nadia.
Yeah, definitely.
No, it's all right, Amy. Did you have any other questions?
No, all good now. Thank you.
Tom, what challenges have you faced since Brexit?
So, as a business personally, we've seen some interesting things happen around it, but it isn't a particular challenge for us personally because we're domestic. So we deal with domestic shipments and domestic returns in the UK. But the challenges we have seen with the retailers themselves is around, we've had retailers that have just stopped shipping to Europe because of the challenges, the problems. They don't have the capabilities, the expertise in-house to actually come up with a strategy of how to deliver to Europe. And they have a lot of problems around customs holdups and things. So the bigger players, again, they'll have those people that are experts and they'll solve those problems. The smaller ones are reliant on the postal network. They're reliant on providers that are perhaps having challenges around delivery. So we've seen retailers stop. What we've also seen is, this is a plug for another partner, someone that in the industry, we're not actually direct partners with them or anything, but they're a great service. And Globally, which is a service that actually gives domestic presence for UK retailers, we've seen a lot of our clients move over to using that so that they don't have to take the hassle of actually shipping into Europe itself. They can have this local presence within Europe and globally manage the actual delivery and everything for them and the customs clearance. So I've seen retailers moving over to services like that. And then on the return side of things, returning back from Europe, it's just become hugely complicated as a result with the customs clearance and declarations in terms of actually getting the goods back. Pre-Brexit, you had no friction in terms of the shipping to Europe. So everything is as if it was in the UK. You were sending there as if it was in the UK. Now you need to clear those goods to come back. So when they're coming back, if you don't have the correct documentation, you can't actually clear those, and you have VAT and tax issues that are associated with it. So really challenging for SME businesses, and a shame, because they were doing fantastically well, our clients in France and Germany and things, and it's made it a lot more difficult for them to actually do business over there.
Yeah, it has created quite a few challenges for a lot of people. That sounds interesting about Global E, actually. That might be a conversation that we'll pick up, contact them there and see whether they can go into it in a bit more detail. Now, also, does the topic of duty drawback ever come up in any conferences you've been to, or any discussions?
Duty drawback isn't something we deal with much because, as I say, we're sort of a domestic player, and it's the larger retailers that deal with that. But I know it's a big problem for retailers. You know, bigger retailers, it's such a difficult, complex issue to deal with, and they can't deal with it. So there's a big opportunity there in that area.
And can you tell us about any future developments you've got for later in the year, in 2021 or 2022?
Yeah, I think it comes back to just what I mentioned around just trying to get that end-to-end cycle. So in terms of what we do at the moment is we make returns brilliant for our retailers' customers. You know, so they have a great return experience. What does that mean? They come back, they shop more, they'll buy in the first place. They're confident in buying from that retailer. But what we want to do for the retailers is really let them understand why things are getting returned more as well, and analytics around that to prevent it. So that if I'm buying a pair of trainers on a website that's one of our clients, I want them to be told up front that these shoes fit a bit large. Everyone's returning these because they're large. So that entire cycle is where we want to go. So disrupting our own model because we want to prevent returns, but we know that as a result, we'll be able to charge retailers for that service. So ultimately, we want to reduce returns for retailers, but then charge and get that great sort of partnership in terms of working with them to reduce the returns themselves.
I have started to notice that myself personally. Only a couple of times I've seen it, but on, you know, clothing websites that I've used where they do have a lot more information than they used to about, you know, this dress fits loosely or whatever. So yeah, it's obviously something that people are working towards.
Yeah, and that's enough to actually prevent a return. Just that small bit of information. I've got this, you know, this story that I'll always go back to, and it's brands called Common Projects. You know, their shoes fit a size too big. Every single one of them. It's the nature of their sizing. It's Italian sizing or whatever it is. I think that's where they're made. And essentially, they always fit too big. But you go on websites and they don't tell you that they fit too big. And I just think you're going to get so many returns as a result of that. I can't understand why you wouldn't be feeding that back to your customers. Some of them do. As you say, some of them are starting to do it, but it amazes me that they must be getting nearly 100% returns because they're way too big, those shoes. And it's things like that, simple things and simple changes that make a huge difference to retailers if they can get control of that.
Absolutely. Sounds like it's the future. Now, Tom, last question. If you were to be stranded on a desert island, what would you take with you? It can be a piece of music or a book. Or something to keep you entertained. What would you take?
So I think for this, I'd go for a book, and it would be, I'm going to get, if I get the name right. So there's two of them. So Touching the Void is the book itself, and it's about two mountaineers, and it's Joe Simpson and Simon Yates. They're mountaineers and they're climbing in the Andes. And it was Joe Simpson. This is what I was getting confused, who it was and who wrote it. So Joe Simpson broke his leg while he was climbing, and they were left in a situation where Simon Yates actually had to cut the rope that was attaching them together, leading to Joe Simpson falling into a crevasse with a broken leg and left for dead, essentially. It was a really controversial book because in the mountaineering community, there was a sort of, should he have cut the rope? Shouldn't he have cut the rope? And all this. But what came as a result of it was Joe Simpson actually made it back to base camp. He crawled his way back to base camp. So it's a book of sort of survival. So that'd be good on a desert island.
Yeah, and inspirational. That's amazing. Yeah,
it's really inspirational. A great story in general, but a real inspirational story about the sort of struggle of him making it back. And incredible person.
Oh, great. Thank you for sharing that. Amy, what would you take?
Well, after the story which Thomas just told, I would like to borrow that book from him. And next time I'm going to the desert.
We'll all be borrowing that one.
Yeah, I totally recommend it. They made it into a movie as well, and it wasn't very good, but it was okay. But the book itself is great, and it's very gruesome in the book about his injuries and things. So it's fascinating what he dealt with. Yeah,
it sounds like it should be. It's got movie material all over it, but the book obviously is much better. Well, thank you both for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure and some really interesting topics that we covered. So thank you, and hopefully we'll see you again soon. And remember that CCL are much more than packages.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.